Good morning and welcome to a morning outlook. This is Kim speaking on Friday the 5th of January. So looking at the euro dollar first, and well, yesterday it did look with that bearish pivot swing. It did look like we may have moved down towards the weekly pivot at some point. However, the market just consolidated and then eventually pushed up through the late morning through early afternoon, and it only had a retrace later in the afternoon, and even then it recovered from that. Currently, it's looking like it's actually put a bullish pivot swing in just about. I think it looks like it just fractionally closed above the previous day's high there, which is a bit more of a bullish signal. However, I would say the way where it's sitting, it's a pivotal area around that 121 area, just short of the 121. It may just consolidate up here a little bit more. We do have non-farm payrolls today. Why am I not really massively bearish on this? When we see these patterns, there's divergence, no doubt, on the 4 hours here. Well, there's the part of the reason is the quite significant build up of short positions that are sitting on the euro at the moment, from a retail side, and I do wonder whether we'll get a bit more squeeze on that. Now, of course, at some point all these short positions are right, and it may roll over. We've got with non-farm payrolls, that may be the start of something that may at least see it partially roll over. There is the potential for it to get right the way down. There's no reason why it wouldn't get down to that weekly pivot if it really got a shift on later on, but for now I do wonder if it will just stay pretty range bound for a while where it sits between the yesterday's highs, somewhere between yesterday's highs and lows, really, is certainly a possibility. So it has already caught a daily pivot on some brokers. I've noticed this morning for a composite price on, it's actually hit it, so it's almost ticked off, but it does look like it, at the moment, from what it's doing here back into the 521, that it may just want to come back and hit it properly. Okay, so maybe in summary there, it could just get a bit choppy and stay within the range. Looking at the pound dollar then, well, the pound, similar sort of picture there. It looked like a big bearish engulfing candle. It looked like it could be on for the weekly pivot at one stage, or even part of the way down there, but even that managed to pull the rabbit out of the hat again, and it pushed back up, and it's made a new high already from yesterday. Not as bearish looking on the charts here, no divergence or anything, although unlike the euro, it's got very neutral in terms of retail sentiment, so it's pretty flat in that respect. Now, just looking at its pattern, it does look like it's sort of I drew on it yesterday, and it just looked like, okay, it needed to hit the pivot, but I thought it might have continued this downside, but at the moment it's just continuing this very slow climb up here. Now, it does have a daily pivot below, so there is the possibility if it starts breaking the 60-21 on there, blue lines there, if it starts rolling over from that, it may just come back for that pivot. But it's again, it's one that I think could get a bit rangy where it sits again. The non-farm payrolls being a caveat, which could move things quite significantly. So dollar yen, well, that's at last the pressure coming off that a little bit, and it pushing up. That has, but it did put this bullish Harami sort of pattern in, pushed through, confirmed it yesterday, and it's pushed on again today. Just so some softening with the yen against the US dollar here as it's the dollar pushes up. At the moment, there's little in the way of potential for me at the moment. It's already moved such a significant way through the session, and again, I think consolidation may just occur. It may roll over a little bit. It's getting a bit toppy where it's sitting on this 60-minute chart there. It's into its daily R2, so it's done a decent range when you compare what it's been doing over the last few days. Yes, it may still pop up a little bit, but certainly on these looking at its time frame, it's may be exhausting itself at least a tad. I mean, it may weekly pivots make it look like it may run up to the R1, so it may have a little bit more legs in it. So wouldn't be looking to short it at the moment, but it does look, as I say, like it's had a decent range. But again, the non-farm payrolls could just see that push on upwards later if it came out good for the dollar. Aussie dollar. Okay, it's been consistent right the way through from early December, being consistently pushing up and gaining. It's still got this weekly pivot below, so there's still some potential for it to come off today towards that level, but it seems to be using this 4-hourly 21 as support. It's been hand railing a hell of a lot. At some point, I guess that's got to give, but there'll be people looking at it, and I don't know. Certainly on the RSI here, there's no obvious divergence. So it's come down to 60-minute. There was divergence at the marginal divergence around the highs there. It's as I say, marginal. It didn't really peak at any point along here. The RSI was quite low, but it certainly had an effect. Prices come back, bounced off that pivot initially, and now it's fallen through. So maybe it's setting itself up for a bit more of a continuation to the downside, and we could see the S1 or possibly even yesterday's lows reached at some point. And finally, the Canadian dollar. There's continued seeing some strengthening partially on oil prices holding up really strong, which would certainly help it. And yesterday finally broke those lows. Now there was some divergence leading into that, but starting around that, and there is on the if you look at different indicators, there's certainly divergence on the MACD there. It could get a bounce off this S1 area, weekly S1 area, back towards the weekly, and maybe to that monthly at some point, but we'll see how it goes. It's near enough pushing into the daily pivot hit where we are at the moment, and that could just sort of be the nail in the coffin there. Never diverged on the lower time frames here more recently. There was slightly, may have had a bit of divergence between some of the later lows, which were slightly higher than the yesterday's low. So there we are. That's where we're sitting at the moment. I think it's a better pop to the downside, but again, we've got news coming out on the Canadian dollar later. It's got the employment data coming out at 1:30 as well. Now, other data coming out today, we've already seen the Aussie trade balance. We've got the European flash estimates of the CPI inflation and German retail sales already out. So that's pretty much it today. Later on at 3 p.m. In the US, we got the ISM services PMI, or non-manufacturing as they prefer to call it. So that's at 3 p.m. So that may create a bit of volatility there just to finish off the afternoon. Right, have a great one. Bye for now.